right, good morning, everyone. Just so excited to be worshiping with all of you every week. It's been great. And I know for today's sermon, I really felt like there was something on my heart, not just from personal perspective, but even as I've been just trying to get to know some of us over the past few months, and even in my own experience as serving Uptown since June, I really feel like there is a spiritual reality that all of us needs to be awakened to. And I've kind of hinted at this throughout the James series, where James talks about prayer, where James talks about fleeing from demons, and all these different things that we weren't really able to unpack. So this sermon is sort of an opportunity to really unpack, what does it mean that we are spiritual beings? Are there such things as evil spirits? And if so, how do we, as Christians, live in this spiritual reality? How many of us have heard of the slogan, knowing is half the battle, from the comic series G.I. Joe? Okay, so some of us do, and some of us don't. So G.I. Joe was a very popular cartoon series back in, I won't date myself, back in time. It was a very popular comic series, and after every episode, there would be like a public service announcement where one of the G.I. Joes, one of the heroes, they would say, knowing is half the battle, and what they would do is they'll zoom in on a kid who's doing something really stupid. Maybe they're talking to a stranger and they're about to be kidnapped, or they're playing with their father's gun at home or whatever. And the G.I. Joe steps in and corrects this person and saying, hey, what you are doing is very foolish. And they explain to the child why they're about to do something very foolish, and it ends with knowing is half the battle. And the idea is, in this world, there are constant battles, and if you can actually know what the battle is, then that is more than half the battle. So there is a very, such an amazing meaning that we need to take a look at. I promise it's relevant to the sermon. Yeah, so this is a meme that I'm sure many of us are familiar with. So this is G.I. Joe, right? So half the battle, there's a pie chart, and half of it is knowing, and a quarter of it is red lasers, the other quarter is blue lasers. And the idea is, especially in a military context, especially in warfare, intelligence is so important. If you know the mission of your opponent, if you know the opponent's strategies, and if you know what your strategies are, then really half of the battle has already been won. Give me a second, because I know that the monitor isn't working, so let me just try to get it to display on my phone. Okay. And let me also open this up in a word of prayer. Father, we just want to thank you so much for this worship service, allowing us to be in your presence, allowing us to be reminded of how powerful your name is, allowing us to be reminded of how faithful you have been in sending us brothers and sisters who have been so loving, especially through people like Pastor Shion and Pastor Janelle. And we just pray a prayer of blessing. We also thank you for giving us an opportunity to commission out the India missions team today. But Lord, the thing that we are most excited about is your word. And we pray that your word will come forth powerfully, convicting our hearts, open our eyes, that we are indeed spiritual people. And there are spiritual implications in everything that we do. And this isn't to strike us into paranoia, but so that we can experience your victories, so that we can see how powerful and how glorious you are. We thank you and we pray all these things in your Son's name. Amen. So, as far as today's sermon outline, what we're going to really focus on is what is the battle? What is the enemy's mission? What are their strategies? And what are our strategies in us engaging in this warfare? And for us to really get at this, before we actually begin, I do want to make note. I know that we do have some newcomers. Here at Uptown, we do believe in the spiritual. It's biblical, it's very clear, but I understand that especially in today's day and age with the advancement of sciences, especially in neuroscience and neurology, there are a lot of things that may make this spiritual reality very confusing and complicated. So I'm not going to go into this too much because I can tell I'm already losing people's attention. If you want to talk about this further, I know it's complicated. I would love to dialogue with you in a deeper capacity with greater detail. But for the purposes of this sermon, and here at Uptown, we do believe that there is a spiritual reality. It's very difficult to explain, but we do believe that there is a reality beyond just our cells, our neurons, the chemical processes that are making up who we are as biological beings. There is something beyond that. So, with that said, the Bible makes it very clear that there is indeed a reality beyond what we see physically. One account that I really love, some of us may be familiar with this. Elisha was an Old Testament prophet, right? Way back in the day. And there's a story in 2 Kings chapter 7 where he is with the Israel's king, and Israel is being under siege by the enemies, and at this time it was the Syrian army. And the Israel's king is wondering, what's going to happen? We are under siege. The Syrian armies, they're surrounding all over us. And Elisha prays to God and says, God, can you open the eyes of this king so that this king can recognize what the spiritual reality is actually looking like? God answers that prayer. The Israel's king, he opens his eyes spiritually, and he sees, although they are surrounded by the Syrian armies, around the Syrian armies is a host of God's chariots and horses. It is a mountain full of God's armies. And what the Bible tries to portray is, in this world that we live in every single day, yes, for the most part, we are operated by what we see physically, but beyond the physical realm, there is indeed a spiritual realm where if our eyes were open, then we will see that there are spiritual beings everywhere. And that's why Paul says in Ephesians chapter 6, verse 12, for we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers of this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. And what the Bible is clearly communicating from the Old Testament all the way into the New Testament is there is indeed a spiritual reality. There are things like evil spirits. So how should we conduct ourselves? How should we live our lives in this reality? How should this actually affect the way we live Monday through Friday? And that's what we're going to talk about. So, before we move on, the next part is, so do we still believe in the spiritual? Absolutely we do here at Uptown. And again, if you want to talk about this in more detail, I would love to talk to you about this. But the first thing that we're going to talk about is what is actually the mission. Because in order for you to truly understand how to engage in the spiritual reality, you have to understand what is actually the mission. What is the objective? What are these evil spirits? What do they actually want? What does Satan and his evil spirits want? And similarly, what does God want? And this is something that, I'll just explain it to us, and then I'll tease out some of the implications. Spiritual warfare, spiritual opposition, spiritual battle, however you want to frame it, Satan's greatest mission isn't to make your life uncomfortable. That really isn't. Satan's mission, his greatest purpose is not to destroy you, is not to kill you, is not to make your life difficult. His greatest mission and his greatest goal, his objective, and this is so important for us to understand the rest of the spiritual reality, his greatest goal is to distract you. His greatest goal is to distract you from glorifying and seeking after God. He'll do whatever it takes. He'll try to scare you into paranoia, or he will try to soothe you and give you success and comfort. He does whatever it takes for the singular goal of distracting you so that you don't seek to glorify God. That is the objective. That is his mission. Conversely, God's goal, what is his objective? What is his mission? It's not to make your life more comfortable. It's not to answer all of your prayers. It's not to give you meaning in life. It's not so that you can live an impactful, influential life. God's greatest mission and his greatest desire is so that you can glorify him. That's it. It's very simple. And I know for some of us, we're thinking, wait, is that what it's all about? Can it be that simple? And just follow with me for a second. Probably the person who experienced the most vicious spiritual opposition in the Bible is Job. And we talked about Job in the sermon series of James. And Job, like I mentioned, he's the guy who everybody wants to be like. He is the most upstanding person in all the world. And Satan is attacking this guy, right? He's taking away all of his possessions. He's killing off his family members. But Satan doesn't take any of this personally. He doesn't hate Job. It's not like Job talked about Satan's mother and Satan is holding a grudge. Job doesn't take any of this personally. Why is Satan wreaking so much havoc on Job? Is simply so that Job doesn't worship God. It's all about Job. Are you going to sing praises to God? Are you going to continue to live your life committed to honoring God or not? That's all Satan cares about. He could care less about his feelings. He could care less about his kids. The only thing that Satan cares about is, Job, are you going to worship God or not? And you see this in every account with Moses, with the first church in the book of Acts. Satan attacks God's people, not because Satan hates their personalities, not because Satan's taking things personally. It's simply because he's trying to distract us so that we seek after other things other than glorifying God. That is so important for us to truly ingrain in our hearts. And it will make the rest of the sermon make so much more sense. Now, for some of us, we're thinking, so wait, all of this is about glorifying God? God, why are you so egotistical? Like, are you so insecure that you just want to create a bunch of human beings so that we glorify you? And let me tell you, as a pastor, I say this with as much sincerity as possible. Some of you, you share your problems with me. You share with the issues that you're going through, and truly, it breaks my heart. No smoke, I'm not pretending. The things that you share, like, it compels me to pray at night, early in the morning, fast, all these different things. I take your struggle seriously. I'm not joking around with this. But at the same time, as a pastor, the best thing that I can give you is not to solve your problems. The best thing that I can give you is to reorient your thinking, reorient your life, so that your greatest desire is to glorify and honor God. Why? Is because God has created us so that when we truly are in sync in glorifying God, everything else in our life will fall into place. The meaning that you're experiencing, the purpose that you're experiencing, the peace, the joy, all these things that you're experiencing, you cannot experience true joy, true peace, unless you are in that groove where you are truly glorifying and honoring God. And we know this, even in our own human-to-human relationships. Imagine, I don't know who your top celebrities are. I know we're in Toronto, some of us maybe Drake fans, Kawhi Leonard, or I was trying to think of like a non-male figure, Margaret Atwood. Yeah, very, very prominent Canadian writer, author, and I think she has a new sequel coming out. But let's say you have the opportunity to honor and please one of these celebrities. Let's say the way you live your life will actually convince Kawhi Leonard to sign a long-term deal here in Toronto. How joyous would you be? Imagine every single time Drake opens up his concert, he gives you a shout-out, and it's a sincere shout-out. You are going to take that picture, you're going to take that video, you're going to share with all of your friends on Instagram. That thing is going to go viral, and your life will be filled with a sense of peace, a sense of joy, all those different things. And that's not irrational. It isn't. These guys are celebrities. We understand. They have a great platform. But why is it when we try to take that concept in our relationship with God and say, you know what? Relationship with God is all about glorifying and honoring God. Whoa. God, why are you so egotistical? Why are you such a joy kill? Why can't you just let me be? And it's so true that in our souls, we are created to please people. That's just the way it is. I mean, you think about any movie, well, not any movie, but so many movies. What's one of the popular storylines? There's always a father-son relationship. Whether it's in Star Wars, or whatever it is. And that theme, that storyline of a parent-child relationship, whether it's mother-daughter, mother-son, father-daughter, whatever, that speaks to us, right? When we see that, many of us, a lot of the reasons why our life is dysfunctional is because our relationship with our parents are dysfunctional. I'm not trying to open up any wounds or anything like that. This is just a truism. We are all created to please somebody. And when we please our dad, when we please our parents, when we please that celebrity, it fills our hearts with great joy. The difference is in Christian life, we are pleasing God because it's rightfully His glory. And when we do that, our lives will be made complete. We will truly know what our own identity is. So what is the mission? What is at stake? What is the objective? Satan doesn't care about how comfortable your life is. He just cares, are you seeking to glorify God? That's it. And God, that's a similar thing. That is what it's at stake. It's not about your personal life. It's not about how comfortable you are, okay? So, what's the mission? And now let's move on to what is their strategy. What is Satan and his evil spirits? What's their strategy? Because if we understand what his strategy is, then we can counterattack. And let me tell you, just even though there is a spiritual opposition between God and Satan, it's not like, it's lopsided. The war has been won already, right? God has already won the war. So what is Satan going to resort to? He's going to resort to all these guerrilla warfare because he knows that the war has been lost. So when I explain these things, it's not like we need to be paranoid. We just need to take these things seriously. And again, it's simply about knowing is half the battle. If we just know what Satan's up to, man, it is so easy. So easy. So what are their strategies? Like I mentioned earlier, serving here at Uptown has been great. And ever since maybe like September, October-ish, it's weird. Like in the span of maybe 2 to 3 weeks, all of these random things happened in my life. Like this is personal life. Jubilee broke her collarbone from sleeping off a sofa. It was so random. Our car got broken into 2 separate times off our driveway. And when I tell people we live in Oakville, they're like, oh my goodness, even at Oakville that's happening? And again, I don't know what Oakville means, but yeah, off our driveway. Somebody stole Jimmy's wallet. Somebody stole the fog light fixture of one of my cars. I'm like, why would you steal the fog light fixture of one of my cars? Off our driveway. One of them was probably as early as around 10 p.m. on a Sunday night. We got into these like weird fender bender accidents. Like all these really weird things happened. And this was in the span of literally 2 to 3 weeks. I shared with the leadership team, and I was also talking to Pastor Sheehan after one of our meetings, and I was just kind of sharing with her. In my mind, I was thinking, oh man, I think there's like a spiritual opposition, spiritual battle. But I didn't want to be that guy who's always like, oh, it's a spiritual warfare. Oh, it's the demon of fevers, or whatever. I didn't want to be that weird guy. So I was kind of describing this to Pastor Sheehan. I was kind of hinting at, yeah, I think there is like some kind of spiritual dynamic. Pastor Sheehan was listening very attentively. And she was like, you know what, it's very similar because when Elder Young began, or when Pastor Will began, or even when she began, she experienced very similar types of opposition, really random things that were distracting them. And I thought she was like, I was like, oh, so maybe she thinks it's spiritual. So I was about to say spiritual warfare, but again, I didn't really want to be that weird guy. And she was like, you know, I think it's spiritual warfare. And I was like, yeah, that's it. I definitely think it's spiritual warfare. That's exactly what I was trying to say. And again, like in our Christian circles, especially with the emergence of science, technology, all these different things, we try not to talk about this, but it's true. There is spiritual warfare. And the first strategy that Satan is going to use, and it may not be in sequential order, is he will unleash a lot of external oppositions in your life. It might be sicknesses. It might be that weird car accident. It might be just, who knows, like, for me, it was my daughter's collarbone and car thefts and all these little things, these nuisances, these annoyances, that it really tempted me from being distracted and really focusing on what I needed to focus on. Now, fast forward a couple months later, and this is just maybe a month, within this past month, I've been experiencing a lot of internal conflict. I know it sounds weird, but I just felt this unsettled feeling in my own heart. And there were certain days where I just wasn't really focused. I would get easily distracted, and that's not my characteristic. I'm a very, hey, if I want to do something, I'm going to go all the way. I'm pretty laser focused. And there was just a lot of weird things in my heart that I just felt like something wasn't in sync. And during this time, I was also meeting up with a bunch of brothers and sisters here at Uptown. I was sharing with you guys were opening up. Very thankful for those conversations. And don't worry, I'm not going to put anybody on the spot. But one theme was, in every single person, everybody was struggling with something that they couldn't quite articulate. It was something internal. Whether it's their emotions getting the best of themselves, whether it's relationships that are going haywire, or just thought life, doubts, whatever. It was just a host of internal things. And a lot of my conversations with them was, A, being able to identify that, and then being able to articulate that. And what I noticed is, because so many people were going through similar types of internal opposition, and even for myself, I recognized that this was another strategy. This is a second strategy that Satan often uses to distract us, to oppose us. And what I'm saying is, a lot of times, Satan will use external opposition, like I mentioned earlier. Those are usually easy to overcome. They're easy to identify. But when Satan uses internal opposition, things in our hearts, things, weird feelings that we can't really articulate, we feel uncomfortable sharing with others, those things are much more subtle, and therefore, they're much more difficult to overcome. And this is a pattern that we see not just in our everyday living, this is a pattern that you see in the Bible. Like I mentioned, Job, he's the guy who experienced so much spiritual opposition. And when does Job actually lose it? When Satan unleashes the external opposition of all of his possessions being lost, his family members dying, all these horrific things, Job is steadfast. He's like, you know what? Bring it on, Satan. I'm still going to worship my God. No sweat about it. But then once Satan uses the internal opposition of his friends, internal opposition of his wife, who's bickering and complaining and telling him to curse God in the face, all of a sudden you see Job's resolve spiraling out of control. You see this in Moses, you see this in the book of Acts, and I'm not going to, just give too much detail, but if you want to talk about it after service, I can give you so many more examples. But this is a pattern that Satan uses biblically and even in our own lives. Satan will use external opposition, but that, for the most part, is no sweat. But when he uses internal opposition, weird relationships, things going haywire that it's really uncomfortable for you to share with other people because it feels kind of shameful, those are much more effective. And because of those oppositions, we're distracted, we're so fixated on those things, we're overcome by our frustrations, and it's hard for us to focus on what God really wants us to focus on. That's the reason why, in one sense, Satan is described as your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion seeking someone to devour. This is true. Satan is a fearsome force, for sure. It's obvious. When you see a lion roaring around, you're thinking, oh, I need to be engaged. I need to be alert. But this is actually not his most dangerous form. His most dangerous form is here in 2 Corinthians. And Paul writes, and no wonder, for even Satan disguises himself as an angel of light. This is the form that actually wrecks many of us. Because you don't even know that he's there. He disguises himself as an angel of light. The things that he's distracting with, you don't even know it's in your heart. It's these weird internal oppositions. And that is actually one of his better schemes against us. And there's actually a third scheme, third strategy that Satan uses, and this is sort of his secret sauce. This is sort of his secret weapon. So on his side, he has a secret sauce. On our side, we have a secret sauce as well. Satan's secret sauce, because he knows he's going to lose this war, his best strategy is to convince you that he doesn't exist and for him to make your life comfortable. That's his best strategy. He'll give you success. He'll give you comforts. He'll enable you to just live your life on your merry own way. Or he will make you convinced that he doesn't even exist, that there is no spiritual opposition, there is no spiritual reality, because he knows that if you are onto him, if you know of his presence, man, it's a no-win situation for him. And going along with this idea that Satan uses internal opposition, he disguises himself as an angel of light. Many of us, we're being wrecked because we're just being lulled to sleep. We're so just consumed by our success or our preoccupation of other things, and we forget about this spiritual reality. So these are the strategies that Satan uses. What about ourselves? What are our strategies? Let's take a look at that. So, like I mentioned, in our strategies, there are In every single one of our strategies, there is a counter strategy that Satan uses, and there is this secret weapon that we have that is pretty good scheme. So the first thing is, what's our strategy? The first thing that God wants to tattoo on our hearts, more than anything else, is He wants us to know that whatever spiritual opposition we experience, that His love is more secure. That's the number one strategy. That's the first strategy. And let me just read this off, because it's such an amazing verse. And especially as we commission off the India team, this is a verse that, please, tattoo this on your hearts. You're going to need this, especially in the most difficult situations. So let me read this out to us, and it comes in Romans chapter 8. If God is for us, who can be against us? So again, many people who are into this spiritual reality, they get really paranoid. They start watching a bunch of YouTube videos. They get all weird. They start seeing spirits behind everything. But truly, the biblical way of engaging spiritual warfare is don't focus on the demons. Don't focus on the spirits. Focus on God's love and how secure it is. He who did not spare His own Son, but gave Him up for us all, how will He not also, with Jesus, graciously give us all things, including the ability to overcome the spiritual warfare? Who shall bring any charge against God's elect? It is God who justifies. Who is to condemn? Christ Jesus is the one who died. I wanted to highlight that. Because especially in the India team, and for all of us as well, there are going to be moments where you see there is spiritual opposition, and you are going to try to engage in that opposition. You're going to try to, pull up your bootstraps and be like, you know what, I'm going to go for this. And Satan is going to try to discourage you. And the way he discourages you is not through external opposition. The way he really discourages you is internal opposition. He's going to whisper into your ears, into your heart, who do you think you are that you can wage war against me? Who do you think you are that you can pray and this sick person is going to be healed? Don't you forget, I know about your grudge with your parents. I know about your addiction with lust. All these internal things Satan is going to unleash. And what this verse is saying is, who is to condemn? Christ Jesus died for your sins. When you experience this kind of opposition and when you feel tempted and thinking, you know what, maybe I'm not up to snuff. Maybe this stuff is only for those crazy Christians, those Jesus freaks. You need to tattoo this on your heart and recite this in your soul and cast and rebuke this against Satan and say, you know what? You condemn me? Guess what? Jesus died for that. And not only that, more than that, Jesus was raised, who is at the right hand of God, who indeed is interceding for us. One of the greatest strategies, one of the greatest weapons that God has given us is that when we engage in spiritual warfare, it's not just you versus Satan and his minions. Jesus Christ is praying for you at that very moment. And just a few verses earlier in Romans chapter 8, it also says the Holy Spirit is interceding on our behalf. And not only is He interceding on our behalf, but He is praying so urgently that His words cannot be expressed other than as sounds of groanings. The best strategy when you are engaged in spiritual warfare, Satan is going to try to distract you. He's going to try to discourage you, saying, who do you think you are? You're not up to snuff. You're not righteous. You need to recite this. Rebuke Satan and say, you know what? That's why Jesus died. I don't pray in my own name, in my own righteousness. I pray by the authority of Jesus Christ. Get behind me and move on. And push on forward. So crucial. Paul continues, this is amazing. Who shall separate us from the love of Christ? Shall tribulation or distress or persecution? No, in all these things we are more than conquerors through Him who loved us. Truly we are more than conquerors if we understand what we have at our disposal, what our spiritual weapons are. Satan doesn't want any of that. As the kids say, he wants no smoke. If he is aware of us understanding the power that we have through the gospel, he doesn't want any of that. Trust me. And that's why he's disguising himself as an angel of light. That's why he's trying to convince every single one of us. He doesn't exist. That's why he tries to give you comfort, success, all these different things. Whatever it takes for us to not know that he's up to something. For I am sure that neither death, nor life, nor angels, nor rulers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor anything else in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God in Christ Jesus our Lord. This is so important. Because like I mentioned earlier, a lot of people who are into the spiritual realm, man, they get so paranoid. But that's not the purpose of this war. The purpose of this war is for God to increase our understanding that his love is so secure. If you're not growing in that awareness, you're fighting the wrong battle. What's the second strategy? The second strategy is a weapon that we are equipped with. And this goes to Galatians chapter 6, and Paul talks about spiritual warfare, and he's telling his, the Ephesians about, we have the helmet of salvation, we have the belt of truth, all these different things, and the people are listening to Paul, okay, like, I'm glad I have the belt of truth, I have the helmet of righteousness, but what's my weapon? Like, what are you going to give me? And Paul continues on, he says, you're going to have the breastplate of righteousness, and people are wondering, okay, but Paul, give me a weapon, I need something. Is it going to be like an AK-47? Is it going to be an assault rifle? Is it going to be like an infinity gauntlet? What is it? Tell me what it is. And Paul points to just one weapon. And we all know this. What is that weapon? And take the sword of the Spirit, which is the Word of God. And some people are thinking, wait. So we're engaged in this spiritual warfare, and you just give me a sword? You just give me one, like not even a mace, not even an axe, not even like a javelin, like give me something. Paul said, no, you get one weapon. That is the sword, that is the Word of God. And it's also accompanied, if you notice, it's related to prayer. Word and prayer. And isn't it so funny that the only weapon that we have is word in conjunction with prayer? Isn't it so funny? That's the only weapon that we have, and yet, as Christians, what is one area of our life we are the weakest in? Word and prayer. Isn't that so funny? This is why Satan is somebody who is pretty smart. Because he knows that there is only one weapon that we have. Word and prayer. And what is a thing that Christians across the world are struggling in? Word and prayer. Satan does such a good job. He is so frightful of Christians who are able to take up their sword, who are able to be committed to praying, that he will make us do whatever it takes. You can serve on that ministry team. You can go to all these meetings. You can go to that retreat. You can go to India. You can do all these things. You can watch YouTube clips of John Keller, Tim Piper, whatever, whoever these guys are. Just don't read your Bible and don't pray. Because if you do that, that's the only weapon. Isn't that so funny? So true. And here at Uptown, we are committed to reading the Bible and praying. And that's why we did the announcements earlier, because we want to spend more time praying. And when I think about 2019, I am so excited, because one of the things that we are really going to stress is how do we read our Bibles meaningfully? Because every time you read your Bible, you're going to hear the same whispers. This is so boring. What is this genealogy all about? Who is this guy that you can't even pronounce his name? All of us, we think of those same questions. And one of the things that we really want to focus on next year with the Experiencing God course, please sign up for that. And that's going to end around the summertime. And summertime is going to dovetail into a workshop that I'm going to set up where it's going to be focused on how can people, everyday people like us, read the Bible in a meaningful way. I'm so excited. We're doing that with the Impact Group leadership team. So if you're part of the Impact Group team, ask your leader, what did you learn? Because our focus going into 2019, there's going to be a lot of things, but one of the things we're going to do is how do we wield our sword? How do we read this Bible in a meaningful way, in a way that actually is relevant, that actually intersects with my life? So that's the second strategy. And the third strategy is the secret sauce, secret weapon. And there once was a man, a villager, whose job was to bring water to the king. So every single day, he would have this big stick, put it around his back, and he would carry 2 jugs, 2 pots. He would go to the well every day, fill each one of these pots with water, and he would bring it back to the king. He would do this probably 3 times a day. And he did this for decades. So when he became older, obviously it was much more laborious. You know, his body was weakening. And one of the pots was talking smack to the other pot, being all stupid, saying, "Look at you. You have a hole in your pot. And every time this poor gentleman, our sir, carries water, by the time he gets back to the king, half of the water has already been depleted. Look at me. I'm able to retain all of my water. I'm so much better than you." And the broken pot is kind of thinking, "Oh my goodness, he's right. Like, he retains all of his water. And every single time we finally reach our destination, I only have half of my water." And he's paranoid. He's wondering, is this villager, is he going to replace me? So he asks the villager, "You know what? I'm sorry. Like, I'm only retaining half of the water. Please, like, I think you need to find another pot. You're getting older. I feel terrible that you're working so hard, and I'm not able to retain all the water for you." And the villager smiles, looks at the pot, and says, "Don't you realize that every single time we go back and forth, because you are a broken pot, you are actually watering all the flowers on the way to and fro the well. And with these flowers that are so beautiful, the reason why the king has so much favor upon me is because not only will I give him water faithfully, but I also give him the most beautiful flowers in this kingdom. And all of that is thanks to your broken pot." I know that's a cheesy story. I read that I think I was at Chipotle. There was like a brown bag. I was like, "Oh, that's a pretty neat story, feel good story." But there's actually a lot of depth in this story. And this is where the secret sauce comes in. Because with that story in mind, I want us to read these next verses from Paul. Paul writes, "All of us have this treasure. It's this amazing treasure, it's this amazing power, it's like the secret sauce, secret weapon. But in jars of clay? Whoa. Not jars of titanium, not jars of diamond, jars of clay? Okay, I'll hang with you, Paul, but where is this going? To show that the surpassing power belongs to God, not us." Paul, what are you trying to say? And what Paul is saying is, all of us, we have this secret sauce, we have this power. But the only way that this power can be magnified, and the only way that God can be glorified, is if people recognize that power doesn't come from us, it comes from God. That's why it's stored in jars of clay. Weak, fragile, brittle people like us. And he goes on and he repeats the same pattern 2 more times. And I want to emphasize this because, again, this needs to be tattooed into our hearts. The very next verse he says, "We are afflicted in every way, but not crushed, perplexed, but not driven to despair, persecuted, but not forsaken, struck down, but not destroyed, always carrying in the body the death of Jesus." Who wants to live like that? Who wants to live always afflicted, always crushed, always perplexed, always driven to despair, always carrying in our body the death of Jesus? Who wants to live like that? What is that? When we experience that in our lives, we're thinking, "God, you are so far away from me." But what is the pattern that we see in the first verse that we see here? So that the life of Jesus may also be manifested in our bodies. Whoa, Paul is onto something. He's repeating himself twice. He's going to repeat himself a third time. What we're seeing is, how does God get glorified? We talked about what's the mission, it's all about God being glorified. How does he get glorified? It's not through your successes. It's not through your comforts. It's not through you just accomplishing and just killing it at work, all these different things that we think that the perfect Christian is supposed to do. How does God get glorified? It's through your afflictions. It's through your despair. It's through your suffering. So that the whole world will know that we are nothing but jars of clay, so brittle, so fragile.
And it makes it that much more emphatic that God receives all the glory. He said this a third time, in case we miss it. For we who live are always being given over to death for Jesus' sake. Why? So that the life of Jesus may also be manifested in our mortal flesh. Brothers and sisters, this is the secret sauce. Because Satan is going to look at all of your despair. He's going to point your finger. You doubt so easily. He's going to point your finger. Look at that grudge. Look at all those relationships. Who do you think you are praising God on Sunday mornings? He's going to look at your addictions to materialism, to lust, whatever it is. And what God is trying to shout and scream into our ears, if we can only listen, is it is through our brokenness that God is able to glorify himself. Just like that villager, that story from that Chipotle brown bag, whatever. Who gets all the glory? It's not that pot. It's the villager who has the wisdom and the foresight. Similarly in our lives, as we experience difficulties, I don't want us to ignore them. I don't want us to just suppress and say, you know what, I'm just going to focus on God's kingdom work. No, it is in your brokenness, it is in whatever struggles you're experiencing that God is somehow able to water those beautiful plants. What kind of God is this? He's amazing. And what Satan is going to do, he's going to constantly pick at that. He says, because of that, you're a subpar Christian. No. The gospel says, Paul is saying, is because of your brokenness that you can actually bring a greater glory to God. And that's what this war is all about. I'm going to ask the band to come forward because, like I mentioned earlier, today's service is going to be a little different. We definitely want to pray for the India team. And I also want to give us an opportunity to pray just for our own personal lives, because I'm sure many of us, we are experiencing some type of internal opposition. Maybe it's external opposition. Maybe some of us, we are being lulled to sleep. And I want us to really engage in this. And let's pray. I don't want us to be ashamed and think, that little issue in my heart, I'm just going to keep it to myself. If you do that, you are playing right into Satan's strategies. Instead, open up, be vulnerable. Pray about it. Share with your brother and sister, because through that, in the gospel, we have power to overcome that. We have power to redeem that. But if you keep it to yourself, you are exactly where Satan wants you to be. In some ways, the spiritual battle is so easy, but in some ways, it's tough because it's so subtle. So before we pray for the India team, I want us to pray and reflect upon this in our own personal hearts. Let's all rise. I want us to just take inventory of your own life. In this rat race that we live in, where it's go, 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 we don't think about this too often. Think about your life. Look into the mirror of your soul. What's going on in your life? What's going on in your heart? What are some of those nagging things that cause you to despair? Don't suppress it. Don't ignore it. Don't sweep it under the rug, because this is an opportunity for God to glorify himself. Own up to it. Otherwise, you're just playing into the hands of Satan. What is that thing that is nagging your heart and your soul? And as much as you try to convince yourself, I'm okay, you know it is affecting you. Think about that. And I'm not here to put anybody into despair. I'm here to speak truth and hope into your heart. Because whatever that thing is, no matter how unsurmountable it is in your life, God will redeem it, and God will make his glory known, and he will honor himself through it. And yeah, it may hurt your ego because you're that pot that's broken. But guess what? This life isn't about us. It's about how can we glorify and honor our King. And let me tell you, at Uptown, if we have a bunch of professional Christians who know what to do, this ministry is going to go nowhere fast. But if we have a community filled with broken, vulnerable people who recognize our sinfulness, who recognize how easily we fall away, our addictions, all these different things, but we bring it to the foot of the cross. Oh my goodness, there will be a revival not only here, but across the church today. I guarantee you that. What is that? And I want us, as we think about that, train our souls, tattoo it into our hearts, stop buying it into the lies of Satan, and replace that with the love of the gospel. Who is to condemn? Jesus Christ died for that. Not only is he dead, but he rose again, and he is interceding on your behalf right this very moment. That sword, pick that up, wield it. This war is inevitable. It's just a matter of us being aware of it. Replacing the lies of Satan and substituting it with the truth of the gospel. I just want us to reflect upon that for a moment before we pray for it and do